All right, let's do that real quick sound check. I don't need 200 people telling me. Thank you, dog man. Victoria, that's good. Shiva shampoo. All right. It's crazy that I spent all this money on this ZVT whatever camera, $600. You know what? I'm not impressed. I am not impressed. I have more trouble with this syncing with my audio, doing anything. I got a cheap $200 camera that I use as a backup that I've used for the past 10 shows. You guys haven't had a problem with the audio or the visuals. It's a $200 backup camera, and it's far superior to this crap that requires. It costs $600, but it requires $600 of other ancillary, all kinds of other packages I had to get just to get this to work right. And it's crap. It's crap. It's 2023. Everything should be user friendly. Everything should be user friendly. Glad you guys could join me. This is episode 3 of the Ogygian Deluge. We're going deeper. You guys remember from the very beginning of this series right here that was just started last month. Flood of Ogyges only concentrates on the month of May for the year 1687 BC. One of the worst Phoenix phenomenon episodes in history. It's one of, first of all, it's in the top 2, maybe top 3. But yeah, it's definitely in the top 3. I'm forgetting the Adam and Eve reset, also caused by the Phoenix, and it's on the 138-year periodicity of the Phoenix. That's 3895 BC. That's the Adam and Eve reset. It was terrible. New heavens and new earth. Humans basically started over, and they called it the antediluvian history. After the flood, when they were writing the history books, they called that 1,656-year period the pre-flood world. They did that because the Phoenix returned. When it returned in the month of May 2239 BC, it literally destroyed 90% of our world. Yeah, this isn't just something we find in the chronological materials and the history and the mythology and all that. I've told you guys in many of my Phoenix presentations, the scientific data that all points to about 2300 BC. Some of them are very specific, saying 2240 to 2250 BC. That's 1 year away, 2239 BC. We're talking about a whole entourage of scientists from multiple disciplines all agreeing that the world was destroyed and every civilization was reset at that time. That was the Great Flood, the collapse of the vapor canopy. Then that introduces the Ogygian Deluge. You see, every bit of the material that I'm going to reveal in this video is going to be free to you in a PDF download. At the end of this video, you can go to the description box, go to Podia, and like my other videos that have a lot of data, you just download the free PDF and you'll have all the data that was discussed in this presentation. So, oh man, let me coffee's so real after pancakes. So we're letting a few more people stack in here. I know this is a little earlier than I normally do. It's a lot earlier than I normally do, but I have a busy day. I'll probably be chatting for 3 to 4 hours from Bro Sanchez on a round table on his channel. So you know, Bro likes to go a long time. So I'm gonna hang. I'm gonna hang. Let's see. Hello, Elizabeth Blanchard. Dr. Corey Stern. Thanks for the heads up earlier. Yeah. Let's see. So Shiva Shampoo and Martin and I are going to be doing the Mandela Effect, all the new Mandela Effect videos. We're going to be doing that on Tuesday. Matter of fact, I don't have my calendar with me right now, but I got Funky Prepper and I are also scheduled. We got some interesting videos coming up, guys. All right. Now, Shiva Shampoo, his messages are gone, man. I don't know what's going on with JJ Recon. I don't know. But you know what? You guys know in Archaix, we got zero tolerance. We have way too many people, too many channels, too many people who have been hired and paid money to stir up discord in the Archaix community. Guys, it's deeper than you think. I'm not going to waste time in this video going into all the details. I got a lot of stuff on a lot of people who have networked together, and they think everybody that they email is cool with them, and I'm actually sending them to me. And you have to understand, there's a lot of there's a lot of just treachery in the truther community. And believe me, I'm moving forward. Don't give a damn about my detractors. Don't care how many people who are formerly allied to Archaix are now turning against me. I don't care, guys. I'm moving forward. I'm revealing the truth. And I got some truth bombs for you guys about this activity coming up pretty soon. It's deep, guys. Truther community is infiltrated to the gills. To the gills. But you know what? I take it all in stride, man. There's no fear here. No fear here. They would have to literally put a bullet in my face to shut me up. And you can take that to the bank. But right now, we're not here to talk about all that. We're not talking about all the losers and all the people, man, that just want to hate. We're not talking about them. What we're going to talk about is a civilization was living on a different calendrical system, one that they knew very well. And I've documented this over and over on my channel. The Anunnaki Ner system was the calendar of the ancient world during the vapor canopy, even before the vapor canopy, going back to the year 5239 BC. This is exactly 600-year periods that were documented by ancient civilizations. It's in the Sumerian records. I've showed you guys the Ner calendar was very real. I believe that's 216. I believe that's 216,000 days. I got so much stuff. Here's my phone right here. That's 216,000 turnings of the stars. Where have you seen that number in the Vedic system? Yeah, guys. They're all those ancient calendars are related. All of them. Yeah, I'm correct. And this number appears over and over in ancient calendrics and cuneiform. The number 216,000 is coded in many anecdotes and narratives. I'll give you an example. Sargon goes out to attack a whole army with a small minority of men, and the number of the enemy is 216,000. This isn't the actual number of the enemy. It's 108,000 times 2. And we already know the associations to the number 108 in the ancient world and the Great Pyramid, and how all these great golden proportion numbers, like the Sumerian 432,000 shars, which Billy Carson and other people say is 432,000 years that just a few kings ruled, which is absolutely pathetically stupid. But as 432,000 shars, it's very understandable. It's turnings of the stars. It's only 12 centuries. What is 12 centuries? It's 2 Anunnaki Ner, from the appearance of Enki and the gods in 3439 BC, and 600 years plus 600 years to the Great Flood, 2239 BC. We are told that these great years of 600 years, we're told by different historians like Flavius Josephus that this was a period of time reckoning between two world ages in the ancient model. That's exactly correct, because the ancient yugas were 216,000 turnings of the stars. Later interpreted after the cataclysm, after the collapse of their infrastructure, when newer generations were trying to interpret older materials, now it became 216,000 years. Oh, wait a minute. 2 ages is 432,000 years, which is actually 432,000 turnings of the stars. It's very understandable how the mistakes were made in ancient times. It's not forgivable that the mistakes are made today and continued when the accurate information is out there everywhere. So we have a civilization in 1687 BC, in the month of May, the Heliolithic Maritime Empire. They're building these megalithic structures all over the Americas. Video 1 showed that not only were they in the middle of a massive building project on Easter Island, Raku Raku, but they were interrupted. They fled in panic. They dropped their chisels and their nails. Their workshops were abandoned. Everything was left in situ where it was for archaeologists to find later. And they find in a certain strata all these hammers and all these tools. It's like, wow, these people got somewhere quick and they never came back. We found in the first video that 1687 BC is the date for the destruction of Easter Island, and that these statues are older than academia purports. We find all the clues in the first deal that this Heleolithic maritime empire was ubiquitous. This wasn't just Easter Island. We learn from Thor Heyerdahl. We learn from Robert Macmillan Brown. We learn from these old scholars the truth about what they found in those days, things you can't find in the modern history books. We find that a maritime empire had connected Easter Island to other civilizations that were building using the same materials. That the work was interrupted on Easter Island is clearly seen as the statues from the quarry were left in situ, just like we find at Baalbek. Guess what also we find in the Mediterranean? We find megalithic ruins with hammers and chisels dropped right where the workmen were when something happened. You're going to see in this video, guys. This is the third video on the Ogygian Deluge, 1687 BC, one of the worst Phoenix phenomenon episodes. You're going to find out in this video there are other places in the Americas that archaeologists have been equally baffled to have found hammers and chisels lying on the ground in the same strata as if all the workmen just suddenly dropped their stuff and ran. It happened all over the world and at the exact same time. So we're going to get deeper. We're going to get deep into this video. Like I said, the PDF will be available. I know normally when I make a PDF available, I get a few thousand downloads, and that's really good. That means people are doing their homework. They're checking my facts, and I'm cool with that. You'll have a free PDF download at the end of this video. All right. I'm just looking at the chat real quick, seeing how things are going, letting a few more people stack up in here. All right. Yes, sir. Kent Johansson, Thor Heyerdahl, he's the man. If you have not read his books, you should. I have some right here on my shelf. Face Diaper's back. I found him in the block list. I'm not sure how he got there, but it took a while to find him because you guys know I got a whole lot of people blocked in Archaix. You got to remain civil. Oh, yeah, my dad gave me this hat. It's a real fedora. Even the tag sideways. It's crazy. I don't know if I like this hat more than my old English bowling cap. What do y'all think? Both of them came from my old man. Y'all tell me which one you like more. I don't know. They always stay bald. I don't need a hat. I only wear them for videos. Yeah, it's pretty even, guys. I got fedora. I got bowler cap. It's pretty equal. There's a bunch of y'all responded. Oh, and then there's Karma Doc. You know she's gonna be different. Bald is beautiful. She ain't even talking about the hats no more. Yeah. Yeah. The Great Falling Away. You got to go to my website. My website's been revamped. All the merch, all the books, anything you can download, everything's on the website, archaix.com. I don't really push a lot of stuff on my YouTube channel. I don't have merch line out there I just have some links, man, if people are interested. I'm just not gonna I'm not gonna do it. Oh, I have a tinfoil hat too. You're right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, DKI golly, that's hard to say. DKI research. I saw the link to Jordan Peterson University. I saw it. I don't know. Yeah, I just don't know, man. In this day and age, I don't know who I want to be connected to anymore. I don't bring that mess to you guys. I try to keep you guys free from all that because basically talking about something lends it energy. So yeah, I don't. Yeah, there's. Believe me, Don's been under some stress lately, and it's 100% understandable because people have basically quit trying to attack me because I just don't give an F, and my armor is secure, and so they go to those who are closest to me, and she's had to deal with a lot of that. And me, I have zero tolerance. I see even a hint of disrespect in the comment section, you're gone forever. I don't even care. I'm dealing with issues in Discord right now because I thought it was Archaix Discord, but I'm finding otherwise it may not be. It's just Archaix in name, so I may be abandoning that and starting a whole new Discord for Archaix. That's going to be vetted a whole lot better. Yeah, guys, I got all kinds of things in the works, and it's I don't know why these people keep trying. I don't know why people keep trying me. They're going to mess around and have me do a video on Morocco and reveal every single thing I know about all the intelligence ops going on in the truther community. They're going to mess around and make me do that. But until that time comes, until they push that button, I'm going to go ahead and get this video underway. So we have a lot of good source materials, man. We got Robert Charot from Lost Worlds, Scientific Secrets of the Ancients. This is part of my source materials for this presentation. This is a very good book. It is from the 70s. It's a really good book, packed full of pictures. Now, all these small books, these were the gems of knowledge in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. This is how the publishing world was putting out some phenomenal stuff for a lot of the guys who couldn't get into the big publishing markets because they're too tightly controlled. Guys like Graham Hancock, he gets a pass. Yeah, from the very beginning, he had no problem breaking into the publishing, breaking in to get a hardback books published and all that. And there's a reason for that. And I've told you guys, I might reveal more about that in the future as well. But that little clique he's a part of, it doesn't matter what they write. They can go to any publisher and they get published almost instantly, and hardback editions. But some of these real researchers, like Robert Charot, yeah, these real researchers, they struggle to break into that market. They struggle. So, Secret of the Ages. Here's another one. I've already told y'all I've revealed quite a bit about this book. There's also an account from 1895 in this book about what a guy saw at the North Pole, and it doesn't make sense according to the establishment narrative that we've been told today. What's in this book totally disproves that the North Pole is Arctic. It's an Arctic belt. But once you pass the belt, there's a whole other world there. This dude in 1895 had no reason to lie about it. I mean, it kind of makes sense that he's telling the truth since the U.S. military sent multiple operations there. Why? If it's just snow. Good books, guys. In Search of Ancient Mysteries, this is another one of my source materials today. Another really good book. There it is right there. Okay, another Moo classic. You guys already know, Churchward. I'm going to quote him. Lots of ancient ruins, lots of awesome stuff from Churchwood. Mystery of the Crystal Skulls. This is another source for today's presentation. In the PDF, in the free PDF download, every one of these books, and even more than I have here, are cited because I pulled some data from old notes where I had just cited the book. I don't actually have that book in my library. But I've got Ancient Man, a handbook of puzzling artifacts, and if you think you know world history, I'm telling you, you don't. Until you recognize all the things that archaeologists have found and has never been reported in the mainstream, such as this man here, William Corliss, is always putting out and demonstrating. I've done some William Corliss videos, but until you read a giant book like this and know exactly all these amazing things that have been found in our history, you don't know world history, my brothers. You don't. Atlantis in America, I've mentioned this guy to you many times, but I've never showed you his book. I've read this book cover to cover at least twice, and a third time I went through it and read a bunch of sections over again. This is Ivar Zapp. I've told you guys about him. His material on the ancient Americas is awesome, but you got to watch out. You have to understand, you cannot discredit a book by its title. Publishers do this intentionally, and I've explained this in my presentations over 2 years ago, how a lot of publishers, to sell a book, they'll make the author retitle it and put the word Atlantis in it. There's nothing about Atlantis in this book at all. This book is scholarly. It is fantastic. You're going to hear some of the information in this book today. It's going to blow your mind. But there's a lot of authors that did that. They had to. And one of my favorites, who has gone to the dark side, David Hatcher Childress, has gone to the dark side. He's a part of the Ancient Aliens agenda now. But before that happened, he wrote some fantastic books just on all the archaeological discoveries that have been made everywhere. Here is a very rare book. His books are getting increasingly more difficult to find. Lost Cities and Ancient Mysteries of South America. They're even hard for me to find, guys. I've got all the David Hatcher books. I even got his Mystery of the Olmecs. I've got his Countdown to Armageddon, or I got everything David Hatcher Childress has ever written. I do not have this book. I drove to New Mexico, and a friend of mine named Elisa Chastain loaned me this book. I got to get it back to her. I'm data mining it. It's going to take me a little while to data mine it, get all my old notes back out just to make sure I got them. But this is the only David Hatcher Childress book I haven't been able to find. But it's been some months since I even looked. Maybe somebody's got them for sale on eBay or Amazon again. I'll look. I'll check it out. But this is also Elisa Chastain's book, and I'm going to be returning this to her too. I read this multiple times in prison. It took a long time before I finally just gave up and gave this book away so I could get some more materials in. Because I was always giving up books. 22 minutes, and I ain't even started this presentation. So the reason I mentioned this 600-year period is because all the tools from all these ancient sites were found at quarries and at workshops and at the ruins. Well, they weren't ruins at the time, but at the superstructures and super constructions, megalithic, Heliolithic architecture all over the Americas. So they were interrupted all at the same time. And it's understandable what happened. No one would be able to piece this together if they didn't study ancient chronological systems. The ancient world at this time did not know of the 138-year periodicity of the Phoenix. It was only several centuries later that many of them, the Phoenicians, caught on, because they realized, damn, all these things are happening every 138 years. And this is where I started pulling all this research together to show you guys from ancient records. But 1687 BC, they didn't know about it yet. They knew of the Phoenix, but they didn't know that there was a time. It appeared in 3895 BC. It appeared in 2653 BC. It appeared in 2239 BC. That's not enough data to put all these disasters together to get 138 years if you don't already know the 138-year period. You would have gotten other numbers. In 1687 BC, it was the 552nd year since the Great Flood. This means that the sky watchers of the time thought that they still had 48 years until a new age. This is what they thought. You have to understand, the 600-year period goes back, guys, to 52. Well, first, let me go backwards. In the 600th year of Noah's life was the year 2239 BC. It was the Great Flood, collapse of the day the sky fell, the collapse of the vapor canopy caused the flood. It was the 600th year of Noah's life. But Noah was born in the first year of the oppression of the 7 Anunnaki kings before the flood. So we have a 600-year period, which is the reign of 7 Sumerian kings to the Great Flood. Noah was born, according to the book of Genesis, 600 years before the flood. But 600 years before Noah's birth and before the first year of the oppression was the year 3439 BC. And that is precisely 432,000 turnings of the shores to the Great Flood, or 600 years plus 600 years. It's very simple. 432,000 shars that Zechariah Sitchin and Billy Carson claim is 432,000 years doesn't make sense, because there would have been 12 great floods in that period and hundreds of thousands of local disasters and cataclysms. It would have made the narrative of the Sumerian text to be of no effect at all. But as turnings of the stars, because these were all stellar systems, it's really easy. It's just 12 centuries. And this is what we have in the Hindu writings. This is what we have in ancient Arabic beliefs and traditions, that before the flood, Ben-Ad ruled for 12 centuries. And we have in the Hindu, we have that the Kali Yuga at one time was measured at 1,200 years. It all makes sense. It's all self-referencing. Enki and the Anuna appeared in 3439 BC, 12 centuries before the Great Flood, 6 centuries before the birth of Noah, who was a descendant of Enoch, Enki. In the book of Genesis, we have Enoch appearing in the 456th year of the pre-flood world. That's 456 Anno Mundi. That's 456 years after the 3895 BC Adam and Eve reset that started the 1656 years to the Great Flood. This means that Enoch of the Bible appeared at the exact same time in history as Enki of the Sumerian texts. So both of them were architects, both of them were benefactors, both of them were denigrated by other gods. In the second book of Enoch, the angels are all basically the enemy of Enoch. It's the same story all over again. So anyway, now you need to get that right. None your biz. You need to get that right, man. You said, didn't you say years were months? Now they're years again? Now, don't accuse me of changing things up. You need to understand, because my Archaix veterans would have never made the mistake you just did. I'm talking about Sumerian texts, or turnings of the stars. That's shars. When we're referring to months, we're talking about Egyptian tradition, Egyptian calendars, because the Sumerians never counted by months. The Egyptians did. And I've got full data sets. You need to download my free PDFs that describe all these things in my prior videos, where I provide all these free PDFs. They're all in the last month and a half. Yeah, you're very misinformed to have asked a question like that. Denise. Yeah, I don't know who you are, Denise. I'm not, when I say Morocco, I'm not talking about anybody's race. I'm not even talking about a culture. You guys will learn. Yeah, these people keep pushing my buttons. I'm going to do a full reveal on Morocco. Is deeply entrenched in the truther community, guys. What comes out of Morocco is some real sinister shit. I don't know what you're talking about. You're from Morocco. That's all good. It has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. So anyway, lost my train of thought. So what we have here, we have evidence from the very first presentation of the Ogygian Deluge, 1687 BC. The first video about Easter Island, they were interrupted because they were living by and doing their calculations, and their expectations were all wrapped around an entirely different extinct calendar system. The Anuna-Nur system of 600-year periods, subdivided into decans of 60-year periods, is the old Sumerian sexagesimal system. This was regarded, it was actually employed all around the world at the time. So it wasn't Sumerian, it was ubiquitous. So we have this situation that Easter Island wasn't prepared. They thought they had 48 more years because that would have been the 600th year. But instead, 552 years, which we know of as what? Archaix veterans know 552 years is a phoenix cycle. It's 4 complete periods of 138 years each. They weren't prepared. They didn't know about the phoenix being on this cycle. They didn't know. And it caught them flat-footed. They were preparing for earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis, subsidence. They were building these fortifications everywhere, and they were making them earthquake proof. They were making them badass. We're going into the detail. This might be a long video. We're going into the detail about these super constructions, what was being built and why. But they were. This is the lesson you need to take away here. A worldwide civilization employing a calendar that they were familiar with from ancient times had suddenly failed them because a new cycle started with the Great Flood. The Chinese are right. In the Chinese traditions, they say at the Great Flood, all systems changed. This is the Chinese say, at the Great Flood, a new world age started, but the mechanics of the new world weren't like the old world. This is what the Chinese say about the Great Flood. So this is exactly what we're finding. This is the origin of the traditions of the Chinese change in the mandate of heaven. So we have a situation with Easter Island, and now part 2 of the Ogygian Deluge, my video on Tiahuanacu. We see clearly they were going by a different calendar. I show you what the calendar was on the Gate of the Sun. The calendar was based off 360 days. They weren't prepared for this phoenix. It was a total interruption. Nobody had let them know. And every civilization in the world fell at the same time, as we'll see. We're only covering the rest of the Americas today, but we're going into a part 4 where we're going to go into Europe, the Mediterranean, Africa, India, the Orient. That's where we're going right now. This is the 3rd video. It's taken 3 videos just to finish the Americas, and I could have drew this out. There's a lot in America. Let's see. So to give you some context, I'm going to give you some context. Cristobal Colon, who we know of as Christopher Columbus, supposedly sailed to Cuba, discovered the New World, all that crap, 1492. You guys know. During Ferdinand and Isabel's reign, he really had to get somewhere. That's the true story about what's going on. But he left the day that there was a huge diaspora happening in the same port that he set sail from. 1492, he left Spain. He ended up in Cuba. Now, he ends up in Cuba in 1492, which is 21 years after the year 1471. Now, you guys really can't. It's really hard to process the state of our world in 1471. But that's how long a phoenix cycle is. This year is 2023. 552 years ago is 1471, which happens to be 21 years before Columbus supposedly discovered America in 1492. You got to process this today because we have to transpose that understanding on the ancient world. It's the year 2208 Anno Mundi. This is the year they kept back then. This is 2208 Anno Mundi. In our calendar, it's 1687 BC. In the month of May of 2208 Anno Mundi, something appeared in the sky. Harold T. Wilkins goes into graphic detail, knowing nothing about the Phoenix history, nothing about the 138-year periodicity. He specifically outlined what happened to Easter Island, Tiahuanacu, and the rest of the Americas all the Middle East, Africa, Asia. Harold T. Wilkins in the 1950s published 2 books. In those books, he says that in the Ogygian Deluge, a red star appeared in the sky and grew bigger and bigger and bigger and became a second moon. It went to war with the moon that we have. And then all kinds of red nebula, like the sky was bleeding, surrounded the sky completely. Then red mud, red dust, and red rain, depending upon the humidity of that geographical location, just fell for all this fallout, red fallout from the sky as a massive series of earthquakes changed the entire topography of the world. Areas like Tiahuanacu instantly went down under the Pacific and then were shoved back up as the water cleared out monuments, buildings, artifacts, people, animals, vegetation, topsoil, and then just kept thrusting it up until South American Andes were 14,000 feet in elevation, and these cities were stuck up there. Machu Picchu, Tiahuanacu, Puma Punka, Salomon, I can't pronounce it. It's where the large, gigantic 30-angle polygons have been found. Huge megalithic walls, unheard of. Looks like they're built by giants. They're all Cuzco. They're all shoved way up here, way above sea level. They weren't built there, and that's what we showed in the second video. None of that wasn't. Even Easter Island wasn't small. Easter Island used to be big, but it looks like Easter Island went down. Water came in and washed all kinds of stuff out. When it came back up, it left the statues half buried. Remember, most of the statues that were en route were found standing up, but buried up to their neck in silt. That's amazing. These statues never made it far from the quarry. They're on the road from the quarry to where all the other statues had already been set up. Why? Because the builders thought they had 48 more years. This is what you need to understand. If you're living by the wrong calendar, you cannot predict future events. Calendars are programs. And once you understand the subroutines and structuring of the program, it has predictive value. This is how Jacob predicted the darkening of the sun and the phoenix phenomenon in 1687 BC when 7 Canaanite armies had surrounded him and his sons. He used the sun darkening and earthquake episode in his favor against the enemy. Rocks fell from the sky, all that. This is how Thales of Miletus, 2 years before the event in 585 BC, predicted that in 583 BC the sun would darken, and it happened, and he became one of the 7 wise men of Greece. This is exactly how Atreus won the throne of Argos against his brother, who was a mighty warrior, a mighty equestrian king, a former king. He didn't have a chance against his brother. He was just an astronomer. But he knew about the Phoenix phenomenon. He predicted that the sun was going to go black. And when it did, the people of Argos gave him the kingship. This is the story of Atreus. They're not the only ones to have predicted it. The Tuatha-De-Danans, who were Phoenician by remote descent, just like Thales of Miletus. Miletus was a Phoenician by remote descent. The Tuatha-De-Danan got their asses handed to them when they tried to invade Ireland against the Furbolgs. In the first battle of Moytura, it was unsuccessful. In the second battle of Moytura, they held out until the sun darkened. When the sun darkened and the sea became tumultuous, they landed their ships and they attacked. And the Furbolgs thought that they had wizards among them that it affected the sky. The Phoenix phenomenon, over and over through history, now that it's been known and understood by the elite, has been used as a weapon. So this if you're not doing your calculations by the right calendar, there's nothing to calculate. Nothing. So yes, Magic Nova, this year is 5917 Anno Mundi. That is absolutely correct. The one we have to worry about is 16 more years from now, 2040. everything happening in the world until 2040 is minor, very local, and if it's big and ubiquitous like COVID-19 was, then it's done completely by humans. 2040, that changes. Humans don't have anything to do with the Phoenix phenomenon. Somebody sent me an interesting link last night or this early this morning about it's a French research about a monster that killed over 100 and something people, and no one and then it just vanished. But it was in the year 1764, and it was during the Phoenix phenomenon, May, June, July period. And I thought that was really interesting because I've explained in my videos that that's when the veil between our sin and something else is the weakest, and when there's the greatest exchange of materials between our realm and another realm is in May, mid-May, every 138 years. And I've got other people that have been sending me research, and people have been mentioning in the comments things that I didn't really know. I didn't realize that May 17th was the 138th day of the year. That makes sense to me. We're going to talk about May 17th in this video concerning ancient Mexico. Very interesting stuff. Also, it's connected to a pyramid. So, people have been educating me as well. Also, is that the original Halloween was in mid-May, May 16th or May 17th or something like that. May 13th, 14th, I don't know. Sometime in mid-May was the original Halloween, and the Roman Catholic Church changed it to the Day of the Dead, which we know of as November 1st or November 2nd, wherever you are around the world. Well, sometimes it's October 31st, the modern commercial Halloween. So we're finding more and more, just like I did in my Anno Domini video, where I show you that the Roman Catholic Church literally created our modern calendar, Anno Domini, to hide the Phoenix cycle of 552 years, which unfolded in the year 522 AD and changed everything. Started a whole 25-year darkness, just like right now, 1687 BC, 25-year darkness starts behind this event. As soon as Easter Island is destroyed, as soon as Tiahuanacu is sent under the Pacific and then thrust at 14,000 feet elevation, 25-year darkness. We're going to see an ancient Mexican text in this video that says the same thing that the records in the Mediterranean say, that after the Ogygian deluge destroyed the world. They was talking about the Mediterranean back then, Egypt, all the surrounding areas of the Mediterranean, Greece. But we have a Mexican text that says the same thing. After the sun went dark and the reign of the giants was over and the floodwaters disappeared, the world was dark for 25 years. Not making it. You can't make this stuff up. It's right out of one of these books I just showed you guys. It's crazy. So let's get into it. Keep entertaining all these tangents. Sonia K. I will be 76 years old in 2040. For you, youngster. See, I'll be 67. I'll be 67 in 2040, and I'll be 73 in 2046. Me personally, I think I'm probably going to die in 2046. I absolutely believe that I will be alive all the way through the Phoenix phenomenon. I'm going to see it. I'm going to be observing it. I may even study it more. But I was born in 1973, and I will be 73 years old when the worst one hits, 2046, for which a lot of my research is also. I have a lot of research on that as well. The 2046 event. I believe at 73, that's the one that might take me out. I've got a lot of other numbers in my life that line up with that year. Let's see. Hey, Nanny Boo Boo. Yeah, the chest is going too far. So, yeah, Shiva, 2052. Don't even want to talk about it. Just like there was a first year of oppression before the flood, same thing. 2052, same thing, guys. That's not the Statue of Liberty guys. That's the statue of Apollo. And from the time that the statue was put on that star fort, counting 168 years, is the year when liberty will be taken from the earth. It's the year 2052. It is the year the dark satellite returns, which is a prison, and it will release 7 occupants. Those 7 occupants are those who ruled before the flood, and in the book of Revelation, they're coming back to rule during the beast kingdom. It's not a time you want to be here anyway. 2052. The 168 years from the time the Statue of Liberty, statue of Apollo was set up. That's not a woman, guys. It's not a female. That is, if you ever saw in Greek mythology the crown that Apollo wears, the spikes, it's very, very unique to Apollo. But yeah, I even posted a picture recently, and the first seal was all about Apollo. Really, all the 7 seals are. But anyway, I digress. The Statue of Liberty has 168 steps. Every one of them are by design. Each step equals 1 year. It has 168 steps up to the torch when the Liberty will be taken from the earth in 2052. The concept of steps equaling years goes back ancient times. My Archaix veterans already know about my Great Pyramid research. I demonstrated over and over how exactly the steps on the Great Pyramid are a calendar, and were always intended to be so. And how this feature was replicated in other pyramids around the world in different aesthetic and artistic ways. All right. That's right, Rayed Ali. 1902 was a Phoenix year, plus 203 steps of the Great Pyramid makes it to the year 2105 AD, which is the year 5999 Anno Mundi, which means the chief cornerstone is the 204th level of the pyramid and the 6,000th year since the Adam and Eve reset. It's not 6,000 years since the world's been here. It's 6,000 years since a pole shift reset that was so destructive that the few survivors thought that they were living in a new heavens and a new earth. And literally they were. So, Lucifer the Lightbringer is no different than Apollo. All right. We got 1,000 people in here, and I've been running my mouth for 47 minutes. Let's get this presentation going, guys. I just wanted to show you, give you an analogy. You're looking at a period 552 years after the Great Flood, the world had recuperated. There's no way all these civilizations could have been being built, all these super constructions. The Heliolithic Maritime Empire numbered millions of people. There's no way that they would be there 552 years if the world's population had been reduced to 8 people. That's a Jewish legend. No, dude, it's not true. There may be 8 people of a certain family lineage that survived, the Noahic bloodline. I don't know. I'm not even going to speculate on all that. But I do know this. There were survivors all over the world in every continent where humans existed. And they had to start back over. But in that 552 years of starting back over, there were short 48 years. They thought they had 48 more years to continue building, and they never got to finish because something new happened. The Phoenix phenomenon was a cycle that broke the old cycle. The old cycle was based off 600-year periods. 600 years before the flood was 2839 BC, the birth of Noah, first year of the Nephilim Anunnaki oppression, the rule of the seven kings. 600 years before that was the first appearance of Enki, the Anuna, a benefactor, and who gave medicines and technology and knowledge, canal works, books, everything to humans, and it angered the gods, and this is why Enki is painted as an enemy in all the ancient texts, because they were written by the victors. But in truth, Enki helped humanity. No one else did. Enki told humanity a great cataclysm was coming. All the other gods refused to tell their followers what was coming. So we have 600 years before that is the year 4039 BC. Every 600 years in the ancient world, something major happened. What happened in 4039 BC? I'm going to tell you. A new object appeared in the sky. An event called the flood, not the flood. The capture flood. A new event called the capture flood happened. The world was destroyed, and the moon appeared in the sky for the very first time, at the same time that a new race appeared to rule over humans, but they weren't exactly the benign characters of the other Anuna factions. In 4039 BC was the appearance of the Ogygian, and they literally appeared on the surface and claimed to have come from the moon. But the evidence suggests they came from the underworld. This is 4039 BC, precisely. 600 years before that was 4639 BC. Our world comes out of a stupor. Our own world basically wakens up and adopts the 360-day calendar. It's like our world was dead. It's like our sim had been turned off, which was the 600th year of a prior sim called the Nemesis simulation, which started in 5239 BC. In the 600 years of the Nemesis simulation, every sim was run. Everything about the future was known. The architecture of the future was completely mapped out. Everything was done, but for some reason, in the 601st year, everything was allowed to carry on, even though it's already encoded in the first 600 years. I don't know. I can only speculate that once something is created, you have to give it its course. You cannot uncreate something that is brought in once you've allowed immortal souls to go in and obtain those avatars. I don't know. I don't know the rules of the Godhead. I'm just going by all the data that we have available to us today. 5239 BC was the Nemesis cataclysm. It began all these simulations. The ancients knew that our world was governed by 600-year periods they called great years, ages. Then the moon appeared and justified that belief. The moon appeared, there was a great flood, huge disasters, and amazingly, it was 600 years. So the belief was further solidified. And then 600 years after that, the Gihon flood occurred in 3439 BC. 1/3 of the human race was destroyed and killed. And remarkably, that was 600 years after that. It was also the exact year that Enoch appeared with the Anuna by ship after a disaster. This was remarkably 600 years before the birth of Noah and the first year of the oppression. 7 Anunnaki kings and their Nephilim underlings. And this was miraculously 600 years before the flood. So knowing all of this history and having all this down, we can understand why the Tiahuanacu gate has the weeping god there crying as he's holding 2 pillars up for the heavens, and the 2 pillars embody the concept of the calendar. We can understand that their religion was based on the turning of the stars, the stellosphere. They understood the fall of the dragon was the great flood. They knew this. Their only astronomy involved Orion and the 7 sisters back then. There's not a hint of a zodiac in these times anywhere in the world. Not a hint of the zodiac that we know of today at all at this time in 1687 BC. when all these civilizations were destroyed. When they were destroyed because they thought they had 48 more years, because the 600th year was 48 years in the future. The Sky Watchers were wrong. The Phoenix phenomenon had now turned into a cycle. It's 552 years. And I have shown through history that cycle remains true. It's 552-year cycles, but the epicycles are 138 years, because 552 is 138 times 4. And even on the small epicycles of 138-year episodes, we still find Phoenix phenomenon events. It's amazing. But they didn't know about it then. They were caught flat-footed. So okay. Sacsayhuaman in South America. We're going to start just with South America, and by far, this is not conclusive. But how you guys say this? Sacsayhuaman, I can't, near Cuzco. It contains blocks that are 300 tons, and that were brought there from as far as 10 miles away. Why do you bring rock from 10 miles away when you have rock right there on the site? Yeah, guys, it's crazy. Was it done for aesthetics, or was it done because it had a high crystalline content? We're going to see that in a minute. So, in South America, among all these ruins, you guys know, you've seen the pictures. I don't have to show you. They're everywhere on Google. Cyclopean polygonal masonry. Gigantic boulders, bigger than this studio, that have 30 angles. Inset in other with smaller boulders that have angles, and then like they're melted together. It's just amazing. It's amazing. Can't fit razor blades in the joints, none of that. This stuff was done to perfection, guys, all over South America, but all the building stopped. None of these constructions were finished. It's amazing. This is the same thing as said of Cuzco. Heliolithic, gigantic boulders form-fitted together in Cyclopean style, super constructions, giant walls going on for forever. Not finished. Not finished before they were met with ruin. So, you guys have seen the pictures of Machu Picchu, and I don't even know if I'm saying it. I sound like a Pokemon character to me, but you've seen it. Beautiful, high up in the mountains, terraced like Oriental communities. It's got a lot of terrace works there, buildings way up high in the sky. You can't live there because it's too hard to breathe. It's too cold. It wasn't built there. Just like Tiahuanacu, Pumapunka, and all the ruins around Lake Titicaca, they weren't built there. Nor was this major fortress called Sacsayhuaman. It wasn't built there. They were built closer to sea level. But in the Phoenix phenomenon, the Andes were shoved 14,000 feet into the air, where they remain today. And this is largely why we have found these ruins so extensively, because very few people are traveling all the way up there to go mess with that stuff. Been there for thousands of years. It's crazy, guys. So, yeah, Machu Picchu has been occupied by another civilization later. They look more like a sedentary race. They added a lot of the brickwork, because you can tell the large original stone structures from the later brickwork, small bricks. People come and adding their stuff to it. You can see. But there's another place in South America at 10,000 foot elevation. It wasn't built there, but it's called Chavín de Huántar. It's in the northwestern Andes. But what's crazy about this is it's got statues and it's got reliefs. They weren't finished, but somebody had gone on, because the original masonry, the original stone structure from a lot of these sites, they are devoid of hieroglyphics. They're devoid of any type of friezes. They're devoid of all that. They're megalithic, gigantic super constructions put all over South America. They don't have anything. But another culture came in behind them and started etching, putting their artwork in there. They didn't have, the hard work had already been done. These earthquake-proof edifices were everywhere. So the Inca come in, and further up north, Quisha, the Aymara, all throughout Central America. You know how easy that was for the Olmeca to come in and claim that they never claimed that they built all that stuff, but they found it. And many of the Mayan cities, they're not Mayan at all. They're from a pre-existing civilization. So same thing with the Aztecs. Aztecs told the truth. We didn't build this. That's Toltecs. Toltecs did all this. And to them, the Toltecs were just some foreign bearded race that came before them. They didn't know much about them. They just venerated them for their astronomy, mathematics, and their building craft. Let's see. So, yeah, that's just ridiculous. Stones that weigh 600,000 pounds. That's beyond utility. It's beyond utility. You know, they're almost bragging about their ability to do it. It's amazing. So we have some researchers that have put out some good information. I'm a critic of Zecharia Sitchin and the chronology and the ancient aliens, but when it comes to the citing archaeological sources, Zecharia Sitchin was pretty good. You can't really mess that up. Can't mess that up. It's already been published prior to you putting the data together. So he had cited some really interesting things. David Hatcher Childress also cites some interesting things. There was a race war after this. It was a literal race war. After the Ogygian Deluge, 1687 BC, the Heliolithic Maritime Empire infrastructure collapses. At that time, according to a lot of these researchers like Thor Heyerdahl and Robert Macmillan Brown and many others I can't name here, they all were of the opinion that the local indigenous population was at peace with a smaller ruling international minority of white people. I don't know what you guys want me to say. I'm going to offend somebody if I call them Caucasian. I'm going to offend somebody if I call them Europoid. If I go by the older anthropological gazettes and reports and call white people Caucasoids, no matter what I call them in this sensitive ass woke society that we live in today, no matter what I say, there's always going to be people who take offense. Just like the fact in all the old archaeological monographs, all you read about is Negroid type peoples in the ancient Americas. They're everywhere. David Hatcher Childress mentions them, Sitchin mentions them, but if Jason mentions Archaix, how many people are going to get offended? Do you want me to say there were black people in Central America, in South America, or do you want me to go by what is in the anthropological text? It describes everybody as either Caucasoid, Negroid, or Mongoloid, or Mongolid. Those are the three designations in a whole bunch of these scientific reports and books. So I don't know. You know what? I really don't care. I'm just letting you guys know that I'm aware of the hypersensitivity in the community, but I'm also aware that in publishing in the specialist literature, they don't give a damn about your feelings. They're going to call it Negroid, Caucasoid, and Mongolid. Sometimes they'll throw in Amerind for like American Indian. But anyway, I'm pretty sure the chat's blowing up behind all this. It's crazy. But anyway, this is what is described. Sitchin did tell the truth, and so did David Hatcher Childress. There are reliefs that are found not only in South America but also in Central America that after the collapse of this civilization, in some areas the indigenous populations just continued on as if nothing happened. It's like a cargo cult scenario. They were no longer in contact with locals. The white people that were basically running the Heliolithic Maritime Empire. This is a shipping guild that was international. You can call them ancient Carians. You can call them ancient Phoenicians. Doesn't matter. It's the same all over the world. This is why the traditions of South America concerning Viracocha, concerning Votan, concerning Boquica, they all described him as a white guy with a long beard. He was a benefactor that brought technology and brought medicines and brought all these things. And every time his ships came in, he brought more of this stuff. And then because of a prophecy of the dying of the sun, this God left. And when he left, this great cataclysm happened. Remember, we're looking at patterns, guys. What's going on in the world today? What's happening right now that this video, part 3 of the Flood of Ogyges, would bear some similarity to? What is it? I'm going to tell you. In the days before the flood, according to Zechariah Sitchin, the Anuna left. Where did they go? It just says they left. They departed. Where did they go? The ancient Phrygian traditions in the old area of Lydia, Hattusis, you guys know the Hittite Empire and all that, they found 60 underground cities below Turkey. And the tradition attached to that area during the Phrygian times was there was a king named Archaix. That king knew that the world was going to be destroyed. So he built underground kingdoms, and he basically put his people in there, and they survived in the underworld during this destructive period. So what do we have with the these gods? The Votan and Viracocha and Bokica, they're not the only ones. I mean, further north, they're called Quetzalcoatl. They got all different names, but it's the same story. They all arrived by ship from the east, and they brought the knowledge of the coming of the death of the sun, but they were 48 years off. So how does it bear relevance today? It's because today, right now, we're being told everything but the truth. This narrative with Ukraine goes on and on. It's back and forth. It's all BS. It's all BS. U.S. government blowing up underground facilities to save children. A whole bunch of people fell for that. You can thank all kinds of people like Charlie Ward. You can thank all kinds of people like Juan O'Savin, members of the Patriot Pacification Program, who have been telling people just to hold on, trust the plan. Undercover Bolsheviks right here in 2023. You can thank all those guys. The same shit's happening right now. They know about the Phoenix phenomenon. They know what's coming. They may not know the exact year, and it's the reason why a bunch of them have operatives studying Jason's material, ordering all my books, sending me emails, pretending that they're just somebody genuinely interested. But I just, you know what, it just gets so ridiculous. But that's what's happening, guys. They're building their underworld facilities, blowing up whole areas for more real estate in the underworld, while telling you a lie that U.S. military is down there saving children from satanic cults, man, because saving the children is the lie that will get everybody on board. It's always going to be, children will always be used against us every single time. Is abuse going on in the world? Of course, it's been going on for 6,000 years. But when it's pushed as a narrative, you got to know why. What's going on, guys? Make a movie, and don't even release it for 5 years. Then when it's released, the whole world watches it, and even mainstream media is pushing it. It's crazy. It's like some of these mysterious individuals that are suddenly appearing on YouTube right now out of nowhere, and they get 222,000 views on channels that only have 60,000 subs. You got to know when narratives are being pushed and why, guys. That's what's happening. In 1687 BC, they knew what was coming, but they got caught flat-footed. They were waiting for a 600th year, but instead, they got hit with a 552-year Phoenix cycle. For those of you who are new to my channel, you don't know what I'm talking about, there is no way I would be able to explain this to you here. But the reason so many are in the chat listening to me now is because they're Archaix veterans, and they know everything I'm mentioning right now because they've heard it all before. They know the arithmetic. They have seen the evidence for the Phoenix phenomenon, and that's why they're here. If you're new to my channel and you're confused, you got a lot of learning to do. It's all free, though. All my videos are free. So, let's see. So what we have is this huge race war in South America, but it doesn't end there. In some areas, the locals basically take the surviving white folks that are in that area, and really they become the royal families of that area in South America. In other areas, the white people just assimilated, blended in, and just added to the gene pool because they were the minority. They're the ones who didn't escape on ships. They stayed behind. But At Chavin de Huantar, something else happened because that area had a minority of white people. It had a large population of black people, and the indigenous people were further scattered out in the countryside. Guess what happened there, according to the reliefs, according to the statues? It looks like the black population quickly enslaved the white population, forced their artisans to do statues in their honor, to do reliefs on all the surviving architecture. Yeah, the survivors were basically enslaved. This is what happened there. There was a very, for a while, there was a very powerful black civilization in South America, but not only South America, also in Central America, as we'll see. So Zechariah Sitchin goes into some detail. It says that white men are seen and are represented in reliefs and statuary all throughout South America, appearing in stone busts. They are nobly clad with turbans on their heads and headbands that symbolize their authority. This is exactly what we find on Easter Island. We find Alpine Nordic noses. We find the evidence of beards on the statues of Easter Island. But more importantly, we now know that those giant red turbine cylinder looking things that are all over the ground in Easter Island were actually the hats that fit on top of the heads at Easter Island. And we've even seen pictures of that. There's an old illustration from the early 1800s of just one of those statues still wearing one of those red hats. So what's true of Easter Island was true of Tiahuanacu, and now we're seeing it's true of Chavin de Huantar, it's true of Cuzco, it's true of Sacsayhuamán. They all suffered the same fate. They were all living by the same calendar. It was the Heliolithic maritime empire that connected them all. Not only them, but way more than that. So Sitchin goes into detail in his Earth Chronicles books, where it's pretty good. It's pretty good material. There, Sitchin and I are going to agree quite a bit. Yeah, he wrote that their facial features and their straight noses identify them as Indo-Europeans. So this goes back. Sitchin here is actually absolutely agreeing with Thor Heyerdahl, Professor Macmillan Brown. Yeah, Sitchin's not deviating from the anthropology. He's actually agreeing with the professionals in this aspect of the Heliolithic Maritime Empire and the statues that have been found all over South America and Central America. This is also what Harold T. Wilkins has found. Ivar Zapp, in the book I just showed you, it's the same thing he found. Yeah, guys, Thor Heyerdahl's caught a bad rap. I think he died in the 80s. But Thor Heyerdahl's caught in a bad rap, man. A lot. The establishment archaeology, which is funded by NGOs and globalists and stuff, they demonize Thor Heyerdahl, although his translations of the Sumerian text are superior to all this ancient aliens drivel that's put out there. He shows that they were just humans who were technologically advanced with an infrastructure intact. They had survived through a cataclysm. They appeared in an old world in the Indus Valley in the Tigris Euphrates. And when they appeared by way of an island called Dilmun that they were using as a base of operations, they virtually did the same thing that Professor Waddell has said. Professor Waddell said the same thing. From this base of operations, they literally built their colonies everywhere. Means of Egypt. The first ruler of Egypt was actually Sumerian. His name was Anum. And this is what we find. Almost every single Egyptian name is the reverse of a Greek name. The Egyptian goddess Neith is no different than the Greek goddess Athene. Yeah. The phoenix in Greek is Knoph in Egyptian. Over and over and over, we have the exact reverse. And it's because some texts were written from left to right, and some texts were written from right to left. And this mirroring effect is what happened when things were transliterated from one language to another. Yeah, so that's the bearded gods, Bohica, Viracocha, Votan. There's more than that, guys. But we can move on to northern Peru. Now, I'm skipping over hundreds of archaeological sites. It's not necessary. It's not necessary. You guys can do your own homework and you can see that this level of destruction was all at the same time. Excuse me. So there's a place called Kimu in northern Peru. Some people call it Grand Kimu. Oh, I got the hiccups. I just had bacon and eggs about 15 minutes before I started this video. So Grand Kimu, 20 square miles of temples and tombs, palaces, immense pyramidal structures. Some of them are half a mile in circuit. Vast enclosures shut in by massive walls, huge outdoor furnaces for smelting metals. Now, Kimu's Great Pyramid, also called the Temple of the Sun, because what are pyramids called in the Americas? They're all called Temple of the Sun. Just like the smaller pyramids that are adjacent to the bigger pyramids are always called Temple of the Moon. Archaeologists don't have much imagination, but this is exactly what they're called today. It's not what they were named back then. Now, Kimu's Great Pyramid is 812 feet long, 470 feet wide, and 150 feet tall. That is immense. That's an immense construction. It's nowhere near the size of the Great Pyramid in height, but it's huge. Great Pyramid is 756 feet on each side. That's amazing. It's massive. It's massive. It's a 41-story building, the Great Pyramid. This is just 150 feet tall. But it's huge. But it's all destroyed, buried under mud, all excavated now, destroyed in the month of May, 1687 BC. So we have Culap in northern Peru, also remarkable ruins. We have a wall of wrought stones that's 3,600 feet long, 560 feet broad, and 150 feet high. You know what that sounds like to me, guys? It sounds just like the Great Wall in Rockwall, Texas. Oh, yeah. There are so many people trying to say that that's bullshit. But I've seen the original black and white photos of what they photographed in the 1800s when they found the wall. It's got windows. It's a huge construction. And aerial photography has shown that this thing goes 20 miles, that it's like 80 feet high and it's like 16 feet thick, and it forms a rectangle and you can see it from the sky, but it's all underground. Yeah. Today, they are trying their hardest to claim that the fortification at Rockwall, Texas, is bogus. It's just a natural formation. It's not true at all. Not true at all, guys. This right here, same size, and this one right here is admitted to be of human construction. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. So we have the ruins of Huananga. The ruins of Huananga, also in South America. Again, guys, it's just the destruction was so complete. No one's ever been back since. All buried under dirt and mud, excavated. But what's interesting is that the megalithic structures, according to Seca de Leon, he talked to the natives and asked them who built all these ruins that the jungle had taken over, and the natives told De Leon that bearded white men had come here from a time long before the Inca. That's pretty interesting. Just a data point, but it's very interesting. Yeah, so we're going to move into Central America. Trying to make up for this time I lost. We're going to move into Central America because that's where things get really interesting. The race war after the Ogygian Deluge, from the power vacuum of the disappearance and loss of power of the Heliolithic Maritime Empire, basically a white mariners guild that had connected all these civilizations. The same thing happened in Central America, and it was bloody. White people were enslaved, taken over, but this one had a different twist. So, let's talk about the civilization of ancient Nicaragua. I got a whole book from the 1800s on Nicaragua. I had no idea how many ruins it had. Ancient, badass ruins. John took all the pictures of it. It filled the whole album up full of just pictures. I've never seen any of these pictures before. You'll be seeing them on my channel, I promise you. But ancient Nicaragua, Costa Rica. So megalithic statue. Let's see. There's megalithic statues of people in this site. It's a bay on the Pacific coast, but this entire area of Nicaragua, according to geologists, they claim that it's direct evidence that the whole land went straight down, and then the waters of the sea came in, destroyed everything in a maelstrom, and then the land came back up. That's really interesting. Same thing happened in South America. It's really interesting, guys. Same thing happened to Davis Island. Remember Davis Island? That's how Easter Island was actually discovered. Somebody was looking for Davis Island, which had 5,000 inhabitants. But the island disappeared with everybody on it and it was never seen since. They took it off the maps. That's Davis Island. So we have civilization, Nicaragua. Man, I finally got to a page. So this, just like Titicaca in South America, that has marine life forms that had basically adapted from a saltwater environment. Listen to this about Nicaragua. Lake Nicaragua is landlocked. It's not attached to the sea, and yet it's got the world's largest freshwater sharks. 12-foot long sharks in a damn lake. What? Yeah, they had adapted. Guys. The species grows to 12-foot long. It's now a freshwater shark. That's pretty scary. I'm not swimming in Central America. Yeah, they got those little parasites that go up your pee-pee. Yeah, they got barracuda. They got piranha. Everything that'll kill you is down there in Central America. Why would anybody get in the water? It's crazy. Never do it. So, hey, Perceiver. Hey, Joel, I see somebody mention your name. All right, so we have right there, Lake Nicaragua. We have two sites. One of them is called Emetipi, and the other one is called Zapatera. These are islands in the lake. The lake's pretty big. These are islands in the lake, and they're absolutely rife with ancient ruins. And it's the ruins that I need to draw attention to. Many of the statues were 15 feet high. But archaeologists were instantly aware that they were looking at statues that were no different than statues that have been excavated in Sumer. That's a problem. Also, East India, Egyptian, and then later Mayan. And among these statues are round-eyed Caucasian men. Statues of round-eyed Caucasian men, bearded men. The local Chortagan Indians claim that the two island civilizations were built by the ancient gods, which is something you'd expect an indigenous culture to say if they had no history whatsoever of who built them. So, also the spiral art of the Heliolithic culture of Malta, ancient British Isles, and the Aegeans is found all over Ometepe Island. Also, a Mediterranean ship was found off the coast. This is crazy, guys. Off the coast of Costa Rica. A Mediterranean type ship that was built around 1500 BC. You can't make this shit up. Just can't make it up, guys. The shipping industries were prolific back then. Thor Heyerdahl proved that you could sail around the world on a reed boat made out of nothing but plant reeds. Made the whole thing. Yeah, he did that. He did it twice, 2 different voyages. And if they could do it on those little reed boats, then that means they can do it. Then they had vast wooden ships like this one that's been found all over the world as well. That were ocean. They were ocean going vessels that could hold like 100 tons of cargo. It's crazy. Oh, and for all you Sichonites out there, just remember that Jason of Archaix in his video presentations cited the sources where the word shar has also been found in Sumerian cuneiform to be used as a unit of measurement for the weight of things found in cargo manifests. So all you thinking shar means year, you better educate Billy Carson on that crap. Now, I found that interesting about the spiral art. You guys know the spiral art of Malta, found all over the UK. Ireland's got a bunch of boulders with the spiral motif on there. Found a lot on Malta. I'm pretty sure it's been found on Sardinia as well. I just didn't mention it here. So let's go into Lubanton. You guys ever heard of Lubanton? I got more books on Lubanton here. Man, I just don't know what I'm doing with all these books. I'm gonna find one real quick. Yeah. All right. Okay. I have another book somewhere in here on the crystal skull. I told you guys you have a video coming out about the crystal skull. This is what's interesting about the crystal skull. Many people try to say it's Mayan. You know, even Indiana Jones try to listen. It's not, guys. The crystal skull was found at a site called Lubanton. It's way older than the Mayan culture. Let me read this to you. It's in southern Belize. It's constructed of megalithic blocks, but it lacks any hieroglyphic stelae. No ornamentation like Mayan friezes and stuff. Nothing Mayan is there at all. Nothing that even relates to Aztec, Toltec, nothing. Archaeologists note that its precision cut stones fitted without mortar resemble the masonry at Tiahuanacu, Pumapunka. Megalithic architecture devoid of anything aesthetic. Now, it is determined that Lubanton is not a Mayan city at all. Believed to be built, get this, archaeologists estimate that this gigantic series of constructions dates before the Mayan culture ever came around. And they estimate that it was built around 2000 BC. That's right after the Great Flood. That's just 2 centuries after the Great Flood. And it's a little over 3 centuries before our Ogygian deluge that we're talking about right now, 1687 BC. So it's older than all Mayan civilization, and its construction techniques are of precision cut stones fitted without mortar, unlike Mayan cities. The architecture is different. It's different. The only cities that can compare to Lubanton are like Tiahuanacu, Cuzco, and Machu Picchu. The pyramids at Lubanton have rounded corners, which is aesthetic. That's a new one there. That's a different style. It's very unusual. But the constructions themselves are of massive blocks of squared stone, 5 to 6 feet long, 4 feet wide, and each one weighs several tons. These blocks are almost as big as the blocks on the Great Pyramid. But the most famous discovery that's ever been pulled out of Lubanton, though, is the crystal skull. We have a video coming on about that. It's not Mayan. It's very ancient. Crystal skull is pretty interesting. So I've even seen people theorize that because the crystal skull has a movable lower jaw, and you don't know how, unless you can make crystal, how is that possible? How do you take a whole crystal piece, turn it into a skull with a movable jaw? That is some really interesting stuff. I'm not saying it's impossible, because the lintels, the door jambs, and the doors themselves are all one piece. The door frames are all one piece at 2 sites in the ancient world. One is Tiahuanacu, and one is the giant cities of Bashan in northern Syria, the ancient Old Testament's giant cities of Argob. That's the only 2 places in the world that those have actually been found, that I know of. So it might be possible by a technique that we're just not seeing today. Aliens didn't do it, Jamie Robbins. You shut your blaspheming mouth. Aliens didn't have anything to do with those doors or that crystal skull. Better quit watching that Indiana Jones. You know what? I think you got influenced by this hat. Indiana Jones hat. We got to put our square business hat back on. So, so we move on to the ruins of Calakmul. This is southeast Mexico. We are leaving South America, going into Central America, leaving Central America, going straight into southern Mexico, where we find the same level of destruction dated to the same period. The flood of Ogyges wiping civilization after civilization out. So we have the ruins of Calakmul, southeast Mexico, are over 6,250 structures, once supporting about 50,000 people. Already 114 stelae have been discovered, more than any other known American site. And the carved stelae found in 1993 actually provides us with a Mayan calendar date of approximately 1500 BC. That's very telling. Now, you have to understand, guys, it's probably closer to 1687 BC. And the reason I say this is because Mayan scholars, when they publish these dates, they're only going by the vague year, which was unknown to the early Maya. They're doing all their calculations based off 365.224 days, and you're not supposed to. The Mayan mathematics is very precise. It's only divisible by 360. It's only divisible by the Sumerian sexagesimal system. So, now, remember, guys, it's a whole 1,872,000 days divided into 13 epochs of 400 years apiece, which is 144,000 days on a 360-day calendar. So in order to get the math right, they're really looking at about 100 years off. They're looking at 1600 BC. This is very, very intriguing that these ruins would date from that period. So we move on now to Mont Alban, where we continue our race war. Right, it's all happening at the same time in South America as it's happening in Central America and Mexico. At Mount Alban, images of black men in contorted positions have been found by archaeologists in reliefs and statuary. The mutilated bodies of indigenous people have also been found mixed with them. And in one relief is a bearded man with a Semitic nose mixed in among all relics. Sitchin wrote that the evidence shows that a black population is basically taken over right after this collapse, and then indigenous cultures, Native Americans, I guess, call them whatever you want, indigenous cultures in that area came to war against them and basically butchered the whole black population. Or maybe they enslaved them. But according to the release in the statuary, it was full carnage. And it doesn't look like they discriminated either. Just came in and killed everybody. So at La Venta, archaeologist Matthew Sterling in the 1940s unearthed a stele measuring 14 feet by 7 feet. And on the stele is depicted perfectly two tall Caucasian men, high bridge noses and a beard, wearing elaborate lobes, European-style shoes. Back then, European-style shoes is basically calling them Scythian, the Sumerian shoes. They kind of curl up on the end. So now we move on to the Bay Islands. Where we find forensic archaeologist Mike Mitchell Hedges. He conducted excavations of pre-Mayan archaic ruins beneath the Caribbean Sea. This is where it gets crazy. He is famous for his discovery of the mysterious crystal skull at the ruins of Lebanton. Now, let me read this directly, just like this. He discovered an 800-yard mound wall enclosure, the top of which was paved with flat stones, immense monoliths, well-proportioned vases, objects of copper and bronze, and found upon a hilltop a huge hewn stone with strange markings upon it. There is no known mechanism that could have moved this gigantic object to such a remote pinnacle. In hastily abandoned chambers, among the awe-inspiring evidence of nature's upheaval, he discovered oddly carved stones and weird figurines of grotesque animals and reptiles. But out of all these artifacts, not one had any relation to the culture of the Maya, Aztec, Toltec, or any other indigenous American culture. The authenticity of the Mitchell Hedges finds had received wide endorsement. The United States government surveys in Nicaragua prove conclusively that at some remote period a tremendous earth movement of cataclysmic force must have taken place in that part of the world, and that the excavations have actually unearthed the cultural artifacts of a prehistoric people that existed prior to the Great Earth Movement. Mitchell Hedges said that the interior chambers of the ruins looked like they had been very rapidly abandoned. Easter Island, they left their tools and their workbenches right there to be found by archaeologists. Tiahuanacu, they left all the building projects undone. All throughout South America, we find the same thing. We're not done. We have more evidence that they were caught flat-footed. We have a lot more evidence. I'm about to get into it. Oh my God, I hope Don's listening because I'm out of coffee. All right. So let's go. So off the coast of Cuba, remember, 552 years from today is 1471 AD. That's a long time ago, guys. 21 years before Cristobal Colon, who you know of as Christopher Columbus, sailed to Cuba. And later, those who own the universities and those who own all the establishment, publishing and stuff, basically said that this man of Jewish descent discovered America. So, that was a long time ago, but that was Cuba. And now off the coast of Cuba, less than 50 miles east of the Yucatan, Canadian Exploration Company discovered at a depth of 2,100 feet below water a submerged lost city, a vast urban center partially covered in sand, shapes resembling roads, buildings, and pyramids and monolithic stone blocks, 6.5 to 16 feet long. Same architecture, same architectural style, same time, 1687 BC. The flood of Ogyges did not bring every land back up. We'll see more evidence of that in this presentation as well. Off the coast of Ecuador, near Esmeraldas, relic statuettes and busts have been pulled out of the seawater, representing every race from Caucasian, Oriental. Here it is, guys. Don't get offended. The report says Negroid. In the world. Every race is represented in the statues found deep underwater around the Caribbean. Ogygian flood did not bring all areas back up. Chichen Itza. Leplangian documents depictions of blacks at Chichen Itza. That's Chichen Itza. That's pretty interesting. A Mayan civilization, but it's not anomalous. We already know there was a very large black population, not only in South America but also Central America. So this is interesting because we can see how the Popol Vuh is telling the truth. The Mayan Codex called the Popol Vuh, it specifically reads that all seem to have spoken one language and to have lived in great peace, black men and white men together. That is an actual quote from the Mayan Popol Vuh. How do I know? Because I read Lewis Spence in his book, The Popol Vuh, and it's mentioned in the free PDF download to this video. So Costa Rica, we need to address some more stuff with Costa Rica because one thing that makes Costa Rica really interesting is this earthquake-prone area of the world. also produces something that's not found anywhere else in the world as well. And that is these gigantic spheres, round balls of stone. I'm going to give you guys some facts about these, and I'm going to correct some misinformation because some people have fallen for establishment paradigm, which is not true, about these stone spheres and about the great faces that were carved into them hundreds of years later. Now, these are petrospheres. This is the research of Ivar Zapp. It's also mentioned by David Hatcher Childers, but I have Ivar Zapp's books here. So their original function, according to those who know the most about these petrospheres, they served as two purposes. One was earthquake dampening. They literally absorbed the shock waves. And it's how they were distributed and put together so they would vibrate together. They would literally diffuse shock waves. That's the first thing that they did. Piezoelectric electricity would actually flash off of them as an aura. When seismic activity increased before an earthquake, these spheres would put off a blue light. That's very, very interesting. It's also very sophisticated, and it couldn't have been done with native rock. That's why they imported this high quartz crystalline structure, basalt granite rock from 30 miles away. The megaliths are perfect spheres, get this, guys, with a stunning tolerance of 0.02%. Guys, 0.25% is the smooth side, laser smooth side of the finished marble on a bank building. You guys know how smooth that is. That's 0.25 tolerance, which is considered paramount today. It's epic. It's good. The tolerance of these spheres, meaning you can measure any part of the sphere and it would be the same measurement all the way to 0.02% tolerance. It's hard to wrap the mind around that level of perfection. And considering it's not a plane, it's a sphere, today we can only do that with a computer. It's crazy. Now, it has been found that many of these spheres were made and then deliberately buried in juxtaposition with other spheres of varying sizes. They were buried in clusters. One cluster that's been found is 45 of these petrospheres all together. So the Costa Rican petrospheres are the largest, but the smaller ones can be found in Guatemala. The granite used was transported, over 11 miles away and is quartz rich. I said 30 miles, I apologize. Over 11 miles away and is quartz rich. So archaeologists believe that earthquakes would generate a piezoelectric. Some of y'all can correct me. Piezoelectric, I don't know. Discharge of negatively charged ions emitting a blue glow. So some geologists believe that these spheres could even dissipate seismic energy. That's amazing. They're protecting their cities from earthquake activity. They just got caught flat-footed. Yeah, guys. Remember the story of the Tower of Babel? It was a veiled threat. Yeah, if you ever think about building something like this to do what you're trying to do, which was exit the construct, yeah, that's what the Tower of Babel was about. It wasn't about building a tower to invade heaven. It was about building a super construction that would allow them to open up a portal to get out of the construct because humanity had realized they are confined. Tower of Babel story was a veiled threat. If you do that again, this is what I'll do to you. What is happening here? The Heliolytic maritime empire is on a worldwide building program to build earthquake-proof everything. And what happens? The Phoenix phenomenon takes them out 48 years earlier because they're living under an older calendar that ended at the Great Flood. Starting with the Great Flood that was caused by the Phoenix phenomenon, the new The new age of destructions is every 552 years, caused by the Phoenix. So, in the first one is the Ogygian Deluge. So yeah, it's the same theme. It's the same theme told in a different way, guys. So in Costa Rica, we also have the same thing. Earlier structures and art clearly depict several racial types, including bearded Caucasians. Ivar Zap notes that the spheres have the same diameter and circumference when measured from any point on the sphere. That is amazing. I can't even do that with Play-Doh. Man, can you imagine trying to do a rock? Even the largest were found to be spherical to within a few hundredths of an inch. Establishment archaeologists view the spheres to be too old and too sophisticated to have been constructed by documented cultures. I have to read that again. Some of you didn't catch that. Establishment archaeologists claim that the spheres are too old and too sophisticated to have been built by any documented civilizations. So what do? They ignore them. It's crazy. Now, this is the Yucatan, and according to the historian Ishishadl, I know I butchered that. You can see it in the PDF, but according to this Mexican historian Ishishadl, he said that this entire area had been destroyed in the Third Age, and that the men who had built it had come from ships from the east. Same thing said in Viracocha, same thing said in Boquica, same thing said in Votan, all the traditions, same thing said of the Micronesian, Melanesian, Polynesian, Eastern Island, Raku, Tiahuanacu, same story the world over. Foreigners with long beards and pale skin showed up on our and brought civilization, brought all these products, brought all these medicines, brought all these new belief systems, it brought building methods, and this great destruction happened, broke up their society, and some of them became the ruling families, stranded among the indigenous people there. And this is why the Inca looked like white people, and then the Aymara, who the Inca ruled over, were indigenous South Americans. Sometimes the white people were enslaved. Sometimes they were enslaved by the very people they formerly ruled over, which was the Native Americans, the indigenous cultures. Other times it was the other population that was also subservient to the indigenous population, which were black. Sometimes blacks enslaved white people. Sometimes they butchered the white people. But when the Ogygian Deluge created a power vacuum and ended the international, intercontinental, Heliolithic maritime empire, it just started. Everybody sorted themselves out, and whole new power structures came into play. While all these megalithic civilizations just laid in ruins and slowly got buried over time, where some of them were reoccupied and new building materials were added on top of them, and we clearly see the evidence of that, especially in Mexico at Teotihuacan, and we're gonna go into that in a minute. So the great spheres came first, guys, and these ages that Ishich whatever his name is, I'm just going to call him Titty. The scholar, the Mexican historian Titty, whatever his name is, Ish Titty. He said that it was done in the Third Age. Well, this absolutely makes sense. We already know that the sun ages were created when the vapor canopy collapsed. We know this. But this third great cataclysm that's being talked about, the third one was the Ogygian flood, because the second one was the Great Flood, and the first one was the Gihon flood. How do we know this? Because even the Egyptian Greek historian Manetho specifically wrote that there was 17,520 years between the three great cataclysms. The recorded history was separated by all this, from the time of the appearance of the gods all the way to the disappearance of the gods. Well, that's absolutely correct, taking into consideration that Manetho was Greek, but he was writing in Egypt. So taking in consideration, as I have showed you guys multiple times, the Greeks added a zero to all kinds of things. Translating stories, traditions, and arithmetic from Egyptian into Greek. I don't know why, but I'm not the first to mention it. There are many historians that talk about the adding of the zero in Greek traditions and texts. 17,000 17,520 years there's nothing. There was no Egypt back then, there was no Greek back then, none of it would have been relevant. But if you remove the zero, which wasn't there to begin with, and you just have 1,752 years, it is precisely what we find. The gods appeared in 3439 BC. This was the appearance of Enki, Enoch, the Anuna appeared. This was exactly 432,000 turnings of the stars before the flood. There's your 432,000 years of Zechariah Sitchin. But 1687 BC is 552 years after the Great Flood. From 3439 BC, taking away 1,752 years lands us precisely at 1687 BC. You can't make this stuff up. You can't. From the appearance of the gods, those who appeared on ships and gave us infrastructure, canal works, knowledge, religion, science, medicines, herbicides, spermicides, everything. They gave us everything. They appeared in 3439 BC by ship. Therefore, they were human. This is why the Anuna are always depicted as bearded on the Sumerian text, and they always got these goggle eyes, because a non-Caucasian people will always represent white people with huge big old eyes. Just like white people lacking imagination want to represent Oriental people or Mongolid people, they always represent it with slanted eyes. They don't have slanted eyes. They have epicanthic folds, which actually increase the beauty, creating an almond-shaped eye. But that's not how white people see it in their art. They always create them with slanted eyes, which isn't real, which isn't accurate at all. No more than ancient white people had goggle eyes like their show, which gave origin to the term watcher. If you're looking at a statue in a temple that has a long beard and two giant eyes filled with lapis lazuli, which is blue, if you have this in your temple, after a while, hundreds of years, you're going to refer to it as a watcher, because that's all it's doing. It's watching you. Big old giant eyes. But yeah, everything makes sense in the historical record when we put it into its proper historical context. Take the sensationalism out. But Manetho was right. The period of the gods was 1,752 years. And that's what we find in Chronicon. That's what we find in the Archaix chronology of the world, which cites hundreds of sources to put all this together. 3439 BC is the 12th century, 600 years plus 600 years to the Great Flood. Then 552 years after the Great Flood, the entire world is caught flat-footed, thinking they had 48 more years because they thought they were still on the Anunnaki-Ner calendar, and they weren't. The world had switched over to the Phoenix phenomenon. So that's where we're at. And I need to put my charger in here real quick. This time I came prepared. Let me charge this laptop because I'm about to die. All right. Now, there we go. I'm back alive. Yes, Jace Ventura 2. Context is everything. When we put things into their proper historical context, the entire history of the world is not only known, it's very easily understood. And because we have documented so meticulously, the architecture of the past gives us a window of the future. Simple as that. Why? Not because of magic, but because we're living in a construct, and that construct obeys fixed protocols. When you know the design, you can know the future. Simple as that. All right. We got to go on to the heads now, because a lot of people, man, think that there's only 12 or 13 specimens in the world, but these are the giant, they call them Olmec heads, which shows like the angry black man boulders and statues. Listen, guys, those are not original at all. I've already told you the Ogygian Deluge, the petrospheres were already there. They're earthquake dampeners. But the Heliolithic Maritime Empire got caught flat footed. These Caucasians got wiped out after that. Many of them fled on ships and went to the Mediterranean, went to other ports of interest. The Americas were abandoned. This is the origin of why the Inca and the Aztecs fell for that bullshit when the Spanish Castilians, Aragon, when the Spanish conquistadors showed up, they showed up in ships, gleaming armor, long brown beards, white skin, blue and green eyes. They show up on the shores, and the Inca fell for that shit, and so did the Aztecs, thinking, oh, this is the return of Quetzalcoatl in Mexico, or the return of Votan. It's a return of Boquica. It's a return of Viracocha. So they gave them respect and watched them for a while. Montezuma II of Mexico started getting suspicious, but it was too late. It was too late. It was way too late. So I'm not going to go into those stories, but the reason why Spanish conquistadors, numbering only 600 or 700 men, could take on a whole empire with 2 million able-bodied soldiers is because of belief. They were trained to believe in the return of Quetzalcoatl. They were trained to believe in the return of Viracocha. How does that apply today? Who have you been trained to believe in the return of? Gets deep, guys. Remember, the breakdown on the first seal of the apocalypse was only because we had to divorce ourselves from programming to understand what it's really talking about. All the codes are, all the prophecies are written in Greek. All the prophecies are written in Greek, therefore it is to the Greek mythological texts and Greek beliefs that we have to revert to unlock those seals and to know exactly where we are in the divine programming. But our Judeo-Christian programming had us believing in some bullshit. So remember, believing in bullshit is what got the Inca Empire collapsed. Believing in some BS is exactly what got Montezuma II and the Aztecs losing their entire empire to 600 dudes in some metal armor who were probably sweating their ass off. Yeah. Belief is how the world is controlled. Oh, that coffee is delicious. So, oh, by the way, those giant heads, before we go to Teotihuacan, which is fascinating, those giant heads, guys, were because after the collapse of the Heliolithic Maritime Empire's infrastructure, the white folks that hung around didn't have anything coming. They didn't have an army. They didn't have any. They were artisans. There were administrators. There were families of the losers. What I mean is there's only a certain number of ships to make your escape. If you can't get on those ships, then you're staying behind. And if you're staying behind, you are now surrounded by an angry population of former slaves, of former servants, or at least subjects. I don't know if slavery was a thing back then. It could have just been a mutual deal where the elite were keeping the indigenous people ignorant and then making everything that they gave them look like it was coming from the gods and it was benefiting their society. I don't know what the actual situation was, but according to the indigenous traditions across the board, they say it was a time of great peace and that these white folks had actually created a civilization that was peaceful and that they were all working in harmony together, and there's no mention of slavery anywhere. So I don't know. I'm not trying to create a narrative here. I'm just explaining I don't know. But what I can do is tell you what the evidence shows, like Zechariah Sitchin and David Hatcher Childers show, and Ivar Zap. And it definitely looks like that white folks got enslaved as soon as the Ogygian flood collapsed their infrastructure. The white people in that area of Costa Rica were enslaved by a larger population of blacks, and that this went on long enough to where the blacks forced the white artisans to take those petrospheres, some of the larger ones that were above ground, and to carve them into the likeness of the black rulers or dictators or overlords or whatever. And they only got to 12 or 13 of them. They built these elaborate busts, but those were originally petrospheres. They weren't originally angry faces. They weren't originally not any of that. This was done after the cataclysm. Now, this civilization didn't last long. Maybe 100 years or so before the indigenous, maybe even 10 years. We don't know. We just don't know. But sometime after the enslavement of all the surviving white people by a larger black population, the surrounding American indigenous cultures came in and slaughtered everybody, because we see the reliefs of white people and black people all chopped up. Arms, legs, heads, all chopped up. And in the ancient reliefs, it always shows crosses for the eyes. That's the symbol of death. It shows them all out. It shows white people and black people together killed by the local Americans. So I just wanted to address that. One of the largest mysteries of the world is about these faces, and it's not even a mystery. They were done ex post facto after a great cataclysmic collapse of an infrastructure. All right. Let's see. Covered all that. Let's go into Teotihuacan. Now we're leaving Central America, going up into Mexico. In Mexico, we come to a place called Teotihuacan, place of the gods. A lot of people think Teotihuacan was Aztec. Some, a little smarter than most, say it's Toltec. It's neither. Teotihuacan is acknowledged by archaeologists to go back as far as 1500 BC. And remember, that's just a approximate. They really don't know. They throw that number out there because they know it's super ancient. It goes back that far. It's a dead ringer for 1687 BC. So here's some really telling things. You've seen the pictures of it. National Geographic's done many things about it. It's supposed to be the largest pyramid in mass in the world. It might be, it might not be, but it's actually like 5 different structures that were all built on top of each other over different periods of time. And I've covered this in other presentations of mine. It's not a true pyramid. It's a mound full of rubble from a previous construction that was limed over, graveled over, then faced in stones, and then another construction was built on top of it that later collapsed, probably from an earthquake. Then it was built over again with another structure, and then the final incarnation of the Pyramid of the Sun is what you have today. This gigantic pyramid that looks like it was a pyramid, but it's not. It's several dead, formerly extinct structures underneath it. Oh, here's what's interesting, guys. I'm not making this up. Every bit of it can be verified. Like I said, the PDF is a free download in the description box. But the Pyramid of the Sun is situated so perfectly as to align with a point on the horizon. There's mountains on the horizon. A point on where the sun sets on May 17th of every year. What? WTF? The Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan is situated to point directly at a place in the far mountains, between 2 mountains, where the sun sets on May 17th. Archaeologists realize that the message of the pyramid is May 17th. I'm going to drink to that while you process that information. Pyramid, May 17th. Now, crazy. So, as if the builders didn't want you to make a mistake, the Pyramid of the Moon, which is also gigantic, but the Pyramid of the Moon in Hunab's which is the unit of measurement for this ancient culture that built all this, in Hunabs is something different. But in today's modern unit of measurement, in feet, which I've shown from the Great Pyramid and from Stonehenge, the 12-inch foot comes from the megalithic yard. It's a very ancient unit of measurement. It was a unit of measurement of the Heliolithic Maritime Empire. It is a solar unit. This is what's crazy. The foot that we have today, guys, is ancient, but for totally different reasons. It's 1/3 of a megalithic yard. But the Pyramid of the Moon is precisely 138 feet in height, right next to the Pyramid of the Sun that was designed to point to a specific area on May 17th. What the fuck, man? It's just crazy, guys. It's crazy. I find this everywhere, guys. I can't wait when I have 2 or 3 days to just unleash on my Phoenix thesis. All these things that I've never mentioned to you guys before about the Phoenix. Man, I got so much data that has never been on YouTube or in my published books. This Phoenix thesis, I'm itching to start it now. I mean, it's already done. I just got to put it together. But man, I just show you guys how the entire ancient world knew what we don't know anything about today. And that's the Phoenix history. Whole ancient world knew about it. Yeah, May 17th. That's it, guys. The Phoenix phenomenon. Yeah, we went over 2 hours. We got a little bit more to cover. I'm gonna speed this up. So concerning Teotihuacan, the locals say that according to those pyramids, the time period that those pyramids were built, that gods in antiquity witnessed the dying of the sun, Phoenix phenomenon. In the end of a previous world age, the gods assembled and concluded that then a god must sacrifice himself to restore the sun. Guys, remember, this same human sacrifice motive is also found during the flood of Ogyges on the other side of the world in the Mediterranean in the story of Perseus and the Kraken, where the people of Argos offer Andromeda up as a sacrifice to pacify the Kraken, which is a personification of the Phoenix. Same thing, guys. And remember, that's where we get the story of Medusa, the woman with the head, the snakes. But all that came later because it's more anciently a memory, like Ignatius Donnelly and Kingston have reported, of human sacrifice of a mariner race, the Heliolithic Maritime Empire. They would take jellyfish and sting the sacrificial victim, so the people witnessing the sacrifice wouldn't think that that the sacrificial victim didn't volunteer, because the jellyfish would paralyze them. While they were paralyzed, they would have a sacrificial ceremony, and they would ask the victim in front of the people if they had any objection to giving their soul to the gods. In exchange, that the gods would give peace unto the people. And the people would listen, and they would hear no objection from the sacrificial victim. The sacrificial victim, therefore, was judged to be worthy to be sacrificed because it was a willful giving up of life. So then, while the jellyfish venom had the victim paralyzed, before the people, they would take out a giant squid, and they would put a giant squid over the face of the sacrificial victim, and the squid would latch onto their face. And I don't need to go into details. This is how this is during the Poseidon worship era of the Heliolithic Maritime Empire. This was the practice of the day. Hundreds of years later, after the Great Mediterranean 300-year Dark Age, started by the Phoenix in 1135 BC, which is 552 years after the Ogygian Deluge, after that 300-year Dark Age, we have Homer appears, Hesiod appears, we have the Iliad, we have the Odyssey, we have Theognis appears, we have all the ancient Greek epic writers suddenly appear after a 300-year darkness, but all the stories they say are very, very mythological. It's because after a 300-year darkness, all their infrastructure had collapsed. And now the story of the human sacrifice had been contorted with a new story about Medusa. There was no Medusa. Medusa was a beautiful woman turned hideous. How did she turn hideous? Someone put a squid on her face. When the squid is removed, what you see is hideous. Okay. Now, the gods assembled and concluded that a god must sacrifice himself to restore the sun. It doesn't matter what the individual details are. The Phoenix phenomenon darkens the sun. This is what we have conclusively determined and documented over and over and over and over. And the story of the darkening of the sun relating to human sacrifice is again associated to a pyramid site. All around the world, same story. Now, Teotihuacan is a city that's been rebuilt numerous times, been abandoned, and then repopulated, abandoned, and rebuilt. We're talking about the earliest occupation levels. So, and according to science, the earliest occupation levels, all they can determine is that it was built sometime before 1500 BC. There you go, guys. Ogygian Deluge. Now, in the Toltec Codex Quimalpopoca, forgive me for butchering that, it records that the sun darkened before the world was ruined and flooding, and then later the earth was again plunged into darkness that lasted 25 years. We have an ancient Mexican manuscript that says that the world was destroyed twice, back to back. Great Flood, Ogygian Flood. But on the second destruction, the world stayed dark for 25 years. Almost the return of a vapor canopy. How do we know? Because in Hesiod's Theogony, he's very specific about the ages of the world, and he tucked in a new age of heroes after the Ogygian Deluge. What does that mean? What does Age of Heroes mean? All Hesiod told us was that new sons of the gods and new giants suddenly appeared out of this period of time. New heroes who fought in the Seven Against Thebes, in the Trojan War, and were on the ship with Jason and the Argonauts. This is Hesiod, guys. Hesiod documented a new age of heroes. It's very unusual because he's got the great golden age, the silver age, the bronze age, the iron age, but tucked in between the bronze and the irons is a smaller age. He just calls it the age of heroes, and he describes it. Why? Because a new vapor canopy was forming, and during that period, humans grew to enormous sizes for about a decade. For about a decade, there was a period where every baby born grew to huge sizes. Animals started getting bigger and all that. Then the vapor canopy collapsed, but these big people were still around. They grew up. They became gigantic. Again, it was a Titans and Giants all over again. It was for a very short period of time, and Hesiod documented it. So Native American traditions of the death of the sun. You guys already know the sun calendars. This is all the sun. I've already explained multiple times. The sun is very important to American calendrical systems because during the vapor canopy, nobody counted by the sun. They counted by the turnings of the stars. How do you say it? You call them shars. One rotation, one cycle, one shar was the full rotation of the stellosphere one time around the eye of the dragon, Alpha Draconis. So when the vapor canopy collapsed, it began the sun ages. And that's the only way the Americans counted all their calendars. So it was during the sun ages, the sun would die each age, and then a new age began. This is they're literally built a calendar on the Phoenix phenomenon. So, in the Aztec Codex Letelier, it's French. You can read it in the free PDF. It tells of a festival observed in memory of the 3 occasions that the world perished. Manetho's 1,752 years, anyone? 3439 BC, Gihon flood. 2239 BC, Noahic flood. The day the sky fell, collapse of the vapor canopy. 1687 BC, the subject matter of this video, the Ogygian Deluge. Ancient Mexican manuscripts say the same thing. They involve volcanoes, quakes, winds, floods, fires. Now, Harold T. Wilkins in the 1950s wrote, each catastrophe was followed by an era of ruin and the destruction of the human race. Each disaster. Now this is okay. I just named in here. I just put them in the. I'll put them in the PDF for you. What I just said: 3439 BC, 2239, 1687. Also, the reference to Manetho's 1752 years. They're all in the PDF for you. So now in the Aztec model, and we have this dude Ishchitty, whatever his name is. He's an Aztec chronicler named Ishotl or something. He says in the Earth Sun age, the world was destroyed in mighty earthquakes, ending the age of the giants. So the flood of Ogyges ended the age of the giants. This is an Aztec text. We haven't got to the rest of my series yet, so you have no idea where I'm going with the flood of Ogyges. But the term Ogyges is of the giant. We'll get there in the next video. Now, what I'm not covering in here is William Niven's work. I've skipped a lot of ancient ruins. I skipped a lot of that stuff, but the truth is, William Niven discovered cities in Mexico for which the government suppressed. He found mastodon, mammoth bones, three-toed sloth mixed in with human skeletons. These people didn't get out alive because where the ground went down around bodies of water, letting the water come in, wash all the ruins and all, and just remove a lot of the detritus, and then the ground shot back up in South America, and that's where we find these ancient cities today. And that's what trapped Lake Titicaca up there with saltwater life forms. It's what trapped Lake Nicaragua in there with 12-foot long saltwater sharks that had adapted to fresh water. When the land was brought back up in Mexico, something else happened. It looks like the land went down, destroyed all these pyramid cities, and then when it came back up, everything was in disarray and covered in a layer of mud. William Niven finds all this, excavates it. The story is fascinating. I've covered it in some of my prior videos on the civilization of Mu and the work of James Churchward. So I just wanted to mention that here. We're skipping all that, but those were destroyed in 1687 BC as well. And that was all throughout Mexico. So I find all that really fascinating. Now, so we move on to the Great Copper Mines. We're almost done. We still have about 30 more. We're probably about 20 more minutes, guys. I'm sorry this is a super long video, but this is about to get super interesting. Most people don't know that the largest copper mining industry in the world has ever seen is nowhere in modern times. It was in ancient times. Hundreds of millions of tons of raw copper found on the ground, on the surface level, and just below the dirt. And then a whole mine stripped out for miles and miles, stripped out mines going underground all around the Great Lakes in North America. Now, Ignatius Donnelly talks about they're ancient. They go back to 2000 BC. That was when the evidence they were first worked, and then all work stopped. Hammers, chisels, carts, everything laid out as if work just stopped and everybody disappeared. Ignatius Donnelly wrote, the mining operations of some ancient people were there, carried on a gigantic scale, not only along the shores of the lake, but even further out upon the islands. Now, here's what Ignatius Donnelly doesn't know. A lot of the older maps of North America do not show the Great Lakes. The idea that the Great Lakes are meltwater from Ice Age is total bullshit. It's all bullshit. Remember, guys, the collapse of the vapor canopy instantly creates all the ice at the northern and southern extremities. Instantly. Everywhere in between, in the more temperate to tropical latitudes, the collapse of the vapor canopy only created rain and flooding and massive destruction. But that's not salt water frozen, it's fresh, and there is no snow. Well, hold on. Let me quantify that. There's half an inch of snow a year in the Arctic and Antarctic because there's no humidity. And without humidity, you can't have snow. Therefore, 2 mile high, thick ice caps, the model is wrong. Ice ages didn't create all that. Something else did and did it rapidly. So, what he doesn't know is that older maps of North America do not show the Great Lakes. They don't. Later maps do. So we're looking at some pretty huge cataclysmic changes very recently between 1626 and 1764 that happened in the Great American Midwest. Great Lakes may have appeared in the Phoenix year of 1626. We don't have any evidence of their existence prior to that. They're not even mentioned on the Kensington runestone. So there's no telling. So anyway, let's move on. The reason I'm mentioning that is because he says that the mining was carried out on islands as well. He wouldn't have known that the mining was carried out everywhere under the water as well because the water was not there when the mines existed. The water is new. So to him, it was on islands. Now, I just wanted to make that clear. No remains of the dead and no mounds are found near these mines. No mounds of the dead, or like the mound builder civilization. It would seem, therefore, that the miners came from a distance, and they did. And they did. The only place in the Americas and maybe the whole world where copper ore is found on the surface. These immense amounts of copper on the ground, they lay just below the surface, and the evidence is that a massive amount of copper was being taken to another staging area. You know this area as Cahokia and the Ohio-Mississippi mound builder civilization. At the top of the Mississippi, they then floated the copper all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, where more mound constructions of high antiquity have been found in Louisiana. So this operation went on for a long period of time, but it stopped around 1700 BC. That's an estimate. 1687 BC is only 13 years off. But around 1700 BC, done. Hammers, chisels, work tools, everything laid out as if men just ran away. All right, so there's not a lot about that operation. It's just very interesting. But with the Heliolithic Maritime Empire collapsing, this operation would have collapsed as well. It's called the collapse of the Old Bronze Age. And it was punctuated by an intermediate period before the New Bronze Age appeared, called the Middle Bronze Age. How come there would be a total collapse of the Bronze Age? Because in the Mediterranean world, they quit getting their tin and they quit getting their copper. Without tin and copper, there is no Bronze Age. Can they find that in native in the Mediterranean area? No. They needed the tin from the Tin Isles. This is the UK. They needed the tin from there. They needed the copper from North America. So they had to find another source, and it took a couple hundred years before the Middle Bronze Age period began, after the 25-year darkness, after the whole world began waking back up, after the Ogygian Deluge. What's interesting is there's researcher Jack Page. He says beginning around 1700 BC on the banks of the lower Mississippi River, where numerous small rivers join it and along the nearby Gulf Coast, reaching its peak after 1000 BC, a whole new culture appeared at Poverty Point. in Louisiana. And they built mounds, but much smaller than the ones of the mound builder civilization straight up the river from them. They built smaller mounds. It was a smaller community. It peaked about 550 something years after the collapse of the mound builder civilization and the miners of the copper fields. So these people were definitely the descendants of those people. They had relocated, their civilization was destroyed. They come down at Poverty Point, and their civilization lasts a good 700 years or so until what's interesting is the dates he gives. The dates are fantastic. He says it reached its peak around 1000 BC at Poverty Point, and some 2,000 to 5,000 people eventually lived there, which is way smaller than the mound builders. Mound builders were hundreds of thousands of people. So what I find interesting is the date he gives. You guys know this date. He says, he said, so the mound builders mined the copper and transported down the Mississippi. And when the Phoenix Cataclysm happened, this is me, in 1687 BC, the survivors abandoned the northern earthworks and relocated to the south to begin all over again in Poverty Point, Louisiana. Interestingly, this is the story of the Toltecs as well. They were said to have migrated from the far north, North America, and they ended up in Mexico. And the Aztecs knew that they were a bearded race. They weren't Native American. They weren't like the Aztecs. They were very different. So what this researcher Jack says that's interesting to me, Jack Page says that by 700 BC, Poverty Point was abandoned as well. Why is that interesting to me? By 700 BC, Poverty Point too was abandoned. 713 BC, the dark satellite appears. Assyrian records say a new age of the world began. 713 BC, the shadow of the sundial of the court of Ahaz in the book of Isaiah during the reign of Hezekiah in the Old Testament. It retrogrades. It not only stops, but it goes back 10 degrees. Ever since then, all the calendars of the world, every civilization had to modify their timekeeping systems. The 360-day year no longer was true. Now the new measurements of the year was 365.24 days, and all new calendars were created after the 8th century BC because of this event. Whatever happened destroyed these people in Poverty Point. And we get to the last section. Always save the best for last. So, thank you for the donation, guys. I can't keep up with the chat, but I see them in there. Appreciate it. Helps me pay Big John taking all these pictures. All right, let's see. We're going back into the Pacific. Episode 1, Easter Island and adjacent islands. We talked about that. 1687 BC, flood of Ogyges wiped it out. Across in South America, we have the same thing with Tiahuanacu. Its civilization was very much like Easter Island, same destruction, same fate. Now in this video, the third video, we started in South America and see all these ancient South American civilizations. The same thing happened, totally destroyed 1687 BC, the Ogygian Deluge. Up through Central America, Veracruz State, all the way across the Olmec areas, all the Maya, going even north into southern Mexico, now Mexico into North America. We've covered the Americas. No, this is not comprehensive. There's a lot we're skipping. My videos can only be so long, but you have a really good idea. The entire Americas were destroyed in the Ogygian Deluge, the Phoenix phenomenon of the month of May, 1687 BC. Harold T. Wilkins said, a red star appeared. It got to the size of our moon. It went to war with our moon. Red dust, red mud, and red rain fallout happened everywhere, while earthquakes shook up the cities. Pyramids and cities went underwater to never return. Whole new land masses appeared. Mountain chains were created. Every bit of this. is described in detail as a description of the Ogygian flood by Harold T. Wilkins. Did he make it up? No. As we'll see in episode 4, the term Ogygian deluge is something that comes out of ancient chronological texts. It was an event that was known in the old world as being terribly catastrophic, and many old chronographers dated events as happening before and after the time of Ogyges. That was a standard unit of measurement in old texts. Stick with old Jason. He's going to show you some chronological secrets that break all this down. So we're going now back to the Pacific. We're done with the Americas. We started in the Southern Pacific, went up through the entire Americas, and now we're ending in the Pacific. Oh, far away from Easter Island to the city of Mattofarchaix. Large human skulls have been excavated by Japanese archaeologists in Mattofarchaix. Local legends of the area called Pohnpei. This is where Mattofarchaix is situated. Pohnpei claimed that the megalithic stones of Mattofarchaix were floated through the air by magic. It's the same thing said of Stonehenge. It's the same thing said by many indigenous peoples who had watched a technologically advanced civilization come in and build things, and they watched from a distance. They can't see the machinery and the cables and all these. It's not magic, guys. They didn't float stones. It's exactly what would look like if you had high tensile strength cords or high tensile strength cables and you were moving megaliths and stuff. They could have been using all kinds of scientific apparatus to increase the vibrational frequency of stone to make it lighter, while cables just picked them up and deposited them where they needed to be. I don't know. I wasn't there. I just know that floating through the air is what almost all indigenous cultures say about anything that they themselves didn't build and they know they can't do it. So Mattofarchaix is in a class with like Nan Modal. It's the same story all throughout the Pacific. These areas, archaeology, you don't even need archaeologists to tell you. You can visit and see these sites today, and it looks exactly like what happened. The entire area was flooded. It went down, then it came back up, but it came back up at an angle, and that's why Nan Modal is going straight into the water. It's an ancient megalithic site. It's huge, and most of it goes underneath the water. Scuba divers can go check it all out, but if you're not scuba diving, you can't see most of the city. They're in the Pacific. They met the same fate as the Ogygian deluge. I believe it's in Micronesia. Yeah, it's in Micronesia, megalithic city. But different than Pohnpei, Nan Modal. Pohnpei may be true too. We just haven't found it. But at Nan Modal, they found a sacred precinct that was dedicated to the turtle. Yeah, this is interesting because the turtle was very sacred to Eastern Pacific cultures. The turtle, just like in India, the world was built on the back of a turtle. So the turtle was a symbol for the world, and that our world is slowly moving through something. Yeah, guys. The whole turtle shell was the surface of the world. It's an old belief. Now, nearby, Pohnpei, the islands of the Carolines, the Isle of Yap, all these, everywhere throughout the Pacific, we have found they're called Marai, but we also have at Tonga, we have these gigantic Stonehenge-like dolmens. They're found all through Melanesia, Polynesia, Micronesia, Pacifica. But at Yap, Nan Modal, Pohnpei, we have these basalt megalithic structures. These were cities, guys, and there's no way that the populations of those islands could have built them. What we're seeing is that the Pacific has raised, or that the continents underneath, the landmass underneath the water has gone down in multiple different areas and never came back up. Because these areas were massive. This gives credence to the idea of ancient Lemuria being in the Pacific. Hit that like button, guys. 818 people. I know I can get 1,000 likes. So at the city of Metallinen, we have the same thing. The Heliolithic evidence of the Heliolithic maritime empire is because we have now at Metallinen, archaeologists have found evidence of both Caucasians and Asians, Orientals that were at Metallinen. That's interesting. That's real interesting. So, not far away in Hawaii, also, don't forget Hawaii. Way before Hawaii was a part of the United States, Hawaii was, they had their own thing going on. A lot of interesting, very intriguing, and very ancient histories belong to Hawaii. I mean, I even read a book years ago, shocked me about in caves in a volcano underneath like 15 foot of loam and deposits and silt, they found human skulls in a cave in Hawaii. It's like, what? How ancient does Hawaii go back? So, but Hawaii also has desert plains in its interior. Those desert plains have pyramids. Yeah, guys, Hawaii. I know you've never heard of this, but Hawaii has pyramids in its interior. It's they're at 7,000 feet above sea level. Do you think they were built at that elevation? I don't know, but I found that very interesting. They would have been a part of the same civilization as well. So with Hawaii, we get close to Japan, and this is where we get another Phoenix crossover. Listen to this. Japanese mythology perfectly preserves this Phoenix transit episode. In the Japanese story, Sosa was a storm god, angry of a wicked disposition, with a long beard, who was a ruler described also as the weeping god. Tiahuanacu, gate of the sun, weeping god, same as the 17th century BC Babylonian Tammuz, the weeping god, same as Tammuz in Hebrew in the Old Testament book of Jeremiah, where the prophet literally talks bad about women sitting at the gate of Tammuz weeping. It's an ancient religion. So Japan's talking about the same thing. So it's the same time period. All descriptions identifying him with Merodach, Sargon I, Nimrod, Tammuz. Like Gilgamesh, he travels to the land of the dead, sails to a hidden island. He combats an 8-headed dragon. And like Sargon, as a child, he was placed in a reed boat. This is a Japanese legend. It is said that he is the reason the sun goddess, Amaterasu, hid in a cave, and the whole world darkened. Quakes occurred, and the ocean was chaotic, just as the feast of fruits was about to occur. The month of May. Can't make this stuff up, guys. Remember, Nostradamus said 2040. He said specifically, a great troubling will occur in the month of May. 2040 is on the 138-year Phoenix periodicity. So Lewis Spence, one of my favorite anthropologists, archaeologists of the 1800s and early 20th century, Lewis Spence wrote that it remains as a logical consequence that the numerous myths and continents formerly existing must be the legacy from an older race. So I will end this with a list from Atlantis, The Antediluvian World by Ignatius Donnelly, a huge, awesome book where he wrote concerning the Heliolithic Maritime Empire. He wrote that, one, they were not the makers, but the rulers of the world. He said that their center of origin was west of the Mediterranean world. He claims that they came from the Americas. 3, their homeland was destroyed in a flood. Sounds like the Americas. 4, Bronze Age, early Iron Age empire. They were highly civilized. This was the Heliolithic Maritime Empire. So 5, he says their empire covered parts of Europe, Asia, Africa, and America. It's very interesting. Ignatius Donnelly has some very compelling material, but so does Lewis Spence. They're from the same era. They're the boots on the ground guys, man. Their material is very deep. This concludes this presentation. The PDF link is already in the description box and has been the entire video. It's in the description box at the very bottom. Under all the links, the final link is the free PDF download to this entire presentation and the full list of books in the back. Here's a full list of books from which all this data came from. It's also in the PDF. It's a free PDF download. It's on Podia. You guys know how I do it. Video's been 2 hours and 40 minutes, and I apologize for that length, guys. But I'm going on with Bro Sanchez here in about an hour and 20 minutes. I'm going to enjoy that, and I'm going to get a break in between. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys sticking with me this long. Hit that like button on the way out so I can get 1,000 likes. And yeah, we got this was only episode 3 of the Ogygian Deluge. That's how much data we have on this. And what's really interesting, guys, you can take this to the bank. What we have about the Ogygian Deluge concerning the Mediterranean world is far more comprehensive, more data-packed, and more amazing than what you've heard in these 3 videos about Easter Island, Tiahuanacu, and the satellites of Tiahuanacu, all these other civilizations. Yeah, because the Ogygian Deluge, all the histories, the old chronological works, that's what I get to go into now. Now I get to go into all the material that talks about the flood of Ogyges, who Ogyges was, that time period. Yeah, guys. Episode 4 is going to be way better than the first 3 episodes. All right, guys. Love you. I'm about to sign out. Go ahead and do my traditional love you guys in the chat. If I can ever get these keys right. My traditional sign out. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I know my Archaix veterans did, because you guys already know all the ancillary information. All I did was just fill in some pieces with this video. Thank you for the hearts. I still don't know how you guys do that. But yeah, I'm going on, bro. I'm going to be on Bro Sanchez channel today. I'm not going to be on the Archaix channel. I'm going to be on Bro Sanchez channel. Hey man, come join us in the chat, because it's not just me and Bro Sanchez. He's got his buddies. We kind of bounced around some stuff last time. It'll be some of the same guys. We might do full roundtable. I don't know what we're doing, but I'm looking forward to it, and I will see you guys there.